Welcome, Partho. It's a great honor and privilege to have you in this podcast on a subject of, should I say, great importance, but also great meaning for both you and I.
Yes.
And this will be, in a way, the introduction to your channel on Vedanta with Partho. So, right off the bat, let me ask you about your own journey. And this is of, great importance to me personally, since we've known each other for about, 44 years now from college. So you were a student of literature, a very keen student and a topper at that. And then I saw you several years later as an educator, as the principal of Mirambika, and an expert on integral education. You set up many schools. And after that, I remember you as a corporate trainer, doing workshops, helping people achieve their potential. And now with your new books on Vedanta, this is obviously your latest, not just passion, but really a very deep sadhana, I think. So please, can you tell us about your own journey?
Yeah, my journey began almost as soon as I completed my literature course at college. In fact, I recall that I was on the verge of going to England for higher studies. I was offered a scholarship from the college because of the results that I had. So it was by default, you were given an invite to, I think it was a Rhodes Scholarship or NLAX or something. I don't. Maybe that one of those scholarships, and the principal had asked me to consider it, and if I'm okay with it, to take the matter forward. And that's where things were at that time. And I think that's when I had a first sort of stirring. I call it stirring of the beyond in me, and for no obvious reason, I just wanted to take a year or two off before going anywhere for higher studies. So those were not days when you used to take gap years and stuff. Now it's more popular, but at that time it wasn't the dumb thing. You expected to go from graduation to post-graduation, doctorate. But I did take a couple of years off, and it was at that time that I had the most decisive experience of my life. I've written about it in my book too. I had a dream vision of Swami Vivekananda, a very powerful, very vivid dream vision, which stayed on with me for days on end after that. Until that point, I really had nothing to do with Vedanta or Indian spirituality. A, I didn't know anything about spirituality or Vedanta. And B, I had no interest. I was also very skeptical about it all. But then again, out of nowhere, Swami Vivekananda, and boom, I didn't know what was happening. I spoke to my mother about it, and she being a Bengali, Bengalis are very, by birth, I think, devoted to Ramakrishna Vivekananda, as you would know. So she said, it's very auspicious, so just keep it to yourself, and it's a very good thing. It's all right. But then things changed after that for me. I suddenly had this inexplicable urge to find out about Vivekananda, which brought me to Vedanta. And I devoured book after book on Vedanta. And, I just lost interest in literature, philosophy, things that were my passions. And I just wanted to read Vedanta, to understand Vedanta. And then within a couple of years of that experience, I left home and family and went to the Himalayas. And my first destination, I wanted to eventually reach Belur Math and become a monk. And my first destination was the Almora Ramakrishna Kutir, where I spent a long time. And I think I met my first human guru An elderly woman who I've written about her in one of my books, Somewhere Among the Stars. And yeah, since then I've been with Vedanta, and it brought me to education. It brought me to Sri Aurobindo and Mother first. I believe, and now at this stage of my life, I know Vivekananda brought me to Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And I came to the ashram, I joined Mirambika, became an educationist.
Did you go to Mayavati where Swamiji?
Mayavati, yes, I did go to Mayavati.
Oh, okay.
Though I didn't spend so much of time at Mayavati, but I certainly visited Mayavati, spent time with some of the Swamis there.
Yes, yes.
And then this person that I met in Almora, she sent me to a yogi in a place called Mukteshwar, very close to Almora. So I went to Mukteshwar. And then this yogi in Mukteshwar, he was doing sadhana in the Himalayas for 40 years. He told me, Sri Aurobindo is my guru. So in fact, I remember I asked him to be my guru. I did the pranam that Bengalis do, and said, please be my guru. And then he just looked at me and I said, no, you belong to someone else. I said, at that time I didn't understand all that. So you belong to Sri Aurobindo. He is your guru. Sri Aurobindo. Well, and it was a lifelong affair with Sri Aurobindo, the Mother, after that.
In fact, that's very interesting, Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, as a sort of forerunner, because we know how when Sri Aurobindo was in Alipur jail,
yes.
Swamiji visited him.
Yes.
He had visions. All of that is well recorded.
Yes.
And we'll come back to that later, because it is said that it is Swamiji who revealed the overmind planes to Sri Aurobindo.
Yes. Swamiji, in fact, revealed Sri Aurobindo's future work to Sri Aurobindo.
Yes, that was another, Bhavani Mandir.
Yeah.
He also had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna, who
Sri
said,
Ramakrishna,
Mandir
yes.
Gado.
Yes.
But we'll come back to that. Now, I want to ask you, if you don't mind, many of us have had this urge to, as it were, renounce the world because of the, should I say, the fire of trying to know the truth. It really burns away all other, I think, desires or considerations. And in your case, obviously, the academic career and the more conventional way of proceeding in a middle-class fashion, as all of us were, I guess, almost conditioned, to proceed.
Yes.
But what is it that made you not go on that path of taking, Diksha, Sannyas? What was it that, prevented you from actually joining the Ramakrishna mission?
Yes. The way I say it, I was hijacked by the Mother, literally. I was on my way to Belur Math. Almora was just, a launching pad, perhaps, because I knew so little about ashrams and about the spiritual life. And circumstances took me to Almora. So I said, okay, it's good. And as a first step, it's good. And from here, I will understand the process a bit better and then go to Belur Math. And then, as things happened, one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was with Sri Aurobindo, the Mother. And I have always since then maintained that the Mother
how was that hijacking?
How was
that hijacking? How did it happen?
So I on one of my trips, I was in Delhi, and I had 3 days before I had to take a train to Howrah, from where I would go to Belur Math. And I had 3 days and I had nothing else to do. So there was a friend of mine, and I asked him that, can I go to some place where I can pick up some spiritual literature? So he said, yes, I know a place. And he took me straight to Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch.
It's so interesting because there's a Ramakrishna mission in Paharganj as
very
well,
close here to the station.
Which is also a nice place, a beautiful place.
This friend took me to Sri Aurobindo Ashram.
That's so interesting.
So the hijack began there.
There.
And I went in and I met Tara Didi. the person who was in charge of the ashram, you know her.
Of course.
So she just talked to me and she said, "Oh, you're going to Almora?" I said, "Yes, I am. My nephew is going to Nainital. So why don't you go with him up to Nainital? And from there you can go to Almora." I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I had nothing else to do. So the next day I was on a motorcycle with
Pranjal?
Pranjal.
Oh my.
So Pranjal, and he was on the bike, and he said, "You okay with an 8 hours bike ride?" I said, "I'm okay with everything. I mean, what's there to lose now?" So 8 hours of bike ride from Delhi to Nainital. Reached late at night.
We went to Van Nivas.
Yeah. Van Nivas. You know those.
I know all those places.
So Nalanji was there.
Nalanji was there.
And he looked at me, another bright young man. So yes, I stayed that night at the ashram. Next day, I quite liked Van Nivas.
It's very special, Sri Aurobindo was there for his honeymoon.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And I went to the meditation hall at that time, and there was this huge portrait of the darshan picture. And he was just sitting there, and I just looked at him, and it was so overpowering, overwhelming presence. It was so something just maybe entered the heart at that time. So anyway, so Pranjal told me that there's going to be a trek to Pindari Glacier. And he will, in fact, be going right through Almora. So he said, "Come along with me." I said, "Yeah, okay, let's go together." So we got to know each other, and he said, "Okay, since you are going to Almora, why not first come with us for the glacier trip, for the trek to Pindari? Then you can go back to Almora." So again, I said, "Okay, fine." So I ended up trekking to Pindari Glacier.
Wow.
And I was completely unequipped for it.
Oh my.
In fact, I walked up with my rubber slippers. So Pranjal said, "You can make it." So, and I was totally ill-equipped for such a trek, but I did it. And then, of course, the group went back, and I went to Almora. Then I had my adventures in Almora, then from there, Mukteshwar. But the ashram, of course, remained with me. So from Mukteshwar, I came straight to Nainital. And there was this Mirambika camp going on. So I was there in the Mirambika camp. Again, Taradi said, with your background in English and all that, it's
So who was
you just joined Mirambika.
Doing the camp then? Was it Matthias?
Nelche.
And Nelche. Okay.
No, it was Nelche. Matthias was not there at that time.
Okay.
Nelche, Matthias would just come up. I know he wasn't involved with the camp. It was Nelche's thing.
Okay. But they were both in Mirambika, right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And then you joined.
Nelche was more with the education part.
Correct. So you just joined right there.
I just joined right there.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
And till then, I had no idea that I would be in education for the rest of my life. Till that point when I got into the Mirambika group, and there it was. So that's what I mean by hijack.
I agree. I completely agree. And I get what you're saying. In fact, that's a nice point to pause and ask a very fundamental question for everybody interested in the spiritual life, which is, would you say that we need, if we really want to progress, a radical openness, like to go with the flow? Because often we have so many, not just prejudices, but encrustations that if someone invites you, come on a boat ride or do something unusual, you can't because you're so entrapped. And I think that what happened to you after college, that sense of expansiveness, even purposelessness.
Purposeless, yes.
Though with a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
Without having the specifics mapped out, which saved you in the sense which allowed you to seize this opportunity, whereas somebody else would have been very busy trying to get into an IIM or go abroad, or as you said, in lax roads. So one needs to have that, would you agree, a kind of radical openness to life's infinite possibilities.
When I hear you say that, it sounds very good, and I'm sure one needs that. But if I go back to what I was at that time, it was far simpler. It was just a state of, how do I say that, a suspension of personal will. I remember that. So I couldn't will anything for myself. There was nothing that I wanted. I left home, and I left the comfort of family life and all that. And in a sense, I'd burnt my bridges. At least that's what I believe inside. I knew I wasn't going back, though I did go back. At that time, I knew I wasn't going back. So there was nothing. It was just the mountains and
So it was not so conscious, but looking back, I'm saying that, I mean...
Yes, you do need that openness. As I said,
and sometimes...
if I now think about it, yes, you do. But
I mean, life also gives it to you, you know. There are spaces in one's life when that happens. And then there are other spaces or times when one is so committed to a cause, like say you wanted to...
But you see, Magrant, to be honest with you, and since this is important in the entire story, the way it happened was, I think there comes a moment in your life when the divine takes charge.
Yes.
And you don't know it. I was too young to know what's the divine.
I completely agree.
But that is what I mean by suspension of personal. Suddenly, you're not there to take decisions. You're just picked up and you're led. If that doesn't happen, I don't think any of us will be ever able to leave. You know, the anchoring is so deep and strong.
Yes.
Yeah?
At the same time,
something just picks you up and boom.
I agree. I'm also like rephrasing it, and I'm thinking about my own life. And I think the most important occasions are when there's a decisive intervention.
Yes.
And you're actually left with no choice. It just happens.
Yes, it just happens.
And it's been like that with me as well. But I think there is a precondition for it which we are not aware of. And that precondition is receptivity. And that receptivity comes with a discontent with the available options. And then you say, well, I don't know where it's going to go.
Yes, you're right.
You know, but I agree. I think that from the other side, I'm just saying it from this side, whereas I find that a lot of people, even my own students, have been very rigid. And sometimes you want to say to them that, you know, rather than being so anxious, you have to be a little open so that something else can act. The otherness can enter your life.
Yes.
But I agree that when it happens, it just seizes you by the scruff of the neck, as it were, and deposits you somewhere else.
Absolutely. And in retrospect, you theorize and all that happens. But when it's happening, you're not there. It's just happening.
Absolutely. But in some ways, then you're the chosen one. You know, it's interesting how in Vishishtadvaita, which we'll come to in a moment, there's this Marjara Nyaya and the Markata Nyaya. So in the Markata Nyaya, which is Markata is like is a monkey. So the little monkey clings to his mother, but the kitten is helpless and completely surrenders to the mother.
Yes.
So the mother holds it by literally the scruff of the kitten's neck. Yeah. So they say that Prapatti or Sharanagati is not the Markata Nyaya, but the Marjara Nyaya, which is that when you just let it happen, and then you're lifted from one place to another. And Rajarao uses it as it were, defining metaphor in The Cat and Shakespeare. Right. But let's come back to, Vedanta, because I'm sure, we are here in these beautiful studios in Spring Hill, Florida, and people would want to know that you guys have been talking about this thing called Vedanta, but tell us what it is. So can you define it simply?
For me, Vedanta is the quest for the self, and that's it. Starts with just wanting to know who I am. Once I've gone beyond the obvious, beyond the obviously apparent. What am I? Who am I? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? What's happening? Questions like that. Very simple, but very transformative questions. And once you ask these questions, you can't be the same again. So Vedanta, I think, begins with that. And it can either lead to philosophy or it can lead to sadhana, depending on what you bring with you.
Exactly. In fact, it makes you think that the actual meaning of the word Vedanta, which
Yeah.
is the end of the Veda on the
Yeah.
one hand,
Yeah.
which also means by end, the goal of the Veda.
Yeah.
And it is
Yeah.
really self-knowledge. It's beautiful.
Yeah. In
That,
fact, the Vedanta for me it's the end of all knowing in the knower. For me, that's Vedanta. When one comes to the knower and all your quest for knowledge ends there and all need for knowledge ends there. That's Vedanta for me. So self-realization.
I agree. In fact, I think it's the Brahma Sutras, or I think it's maybe the Upanishads would say that Brahmavid, Brahmaiva Bhavati. Knowing Brahma, you are Brahma, you become Brahma. But, I mean, this is very simple at one level, but also very profound. And as you said, that knowing ends in the knower.
Yeah.
Knowing the knower,
then there's nothing to be known.
In a way, but there is that knower. Who's the knower? I mean, the kshetra and the kshetrajna, as the Veda says. But here's where, an ordinary person will say, what is all this who am I business? This is who I am. I'm this body, and I was born on such and such a day to such and such parents. And when this body, when I die, when this body goes, that will be the end of me. There's no other me other than this body. And then you might ask such a person, but what about your emotions? What about your mind? What about, all these memories that you have? Some not even from this life, as Vivekananda said, that he remembered things that he knew from earlier, for example. And what happens to you when you go to sleep and so forth? Where do you go? These are, as it were, the standard, toolkit of the Vedantin,
right,
to, in a way, prize you out of the very strong identification with the body. But what would you say to somebody who says, what do you mean, who am I? This is who am I. This is who I am. This body and this body, at the most you may say this body-mind complex is who I am. What would you say to such a person?
I probably wouldn't say anything to him. You see, as I've seen over the years, Vedanta works the other way around. When someone comes to you and asks, listen, I am not entirely satisfied with what I know myself to be. Is there something more? Am I something more than all this? And that's where Vedanta for me would begin. If I go to someone and say, you're not the mind and body, for me it doesn't work that way. So,
no, this is good, but this.
To answer your question, then I wouldn't say anything.
You wouldn't say anything.
Fine,
you're fine.
That.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're
Enjoy
happy
life.
if you're happy with the way you are.
Yeah, and bottom line, if you're happy, you're happy. Go enjoy life. The thing is, if you're unhappy, that will give an opening.
Yes. But I like what you said, Partho, because Vedanta, unlike many other paths, is not about proselytizing. It's not trying to convince, let alone convert anybody.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really a journey of self-awakening and self-knowledge.
Yes.
And those who are on the path will, in a way, find each other. They will also find the Guru. They will also find the signposts. So this is important because today, it's not just the spiritual traditions and the gurus which are, as it were, competing for eyeballs or for our attention, but the entire modern world seems to be built on some sort of propaganda and advertising. Everything we do, I mean, it's all about marketing, and Vedanta is one, it would seem, path where marketing is futile.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about convincing anybody else.
What do you market?
What do you market? Exactly. You can't market the self with the capital S. Because that self is already everywhere. It's already with you. So I think that's a good basis to go ahead, because I was going to ask you, what was the essence of Vedanta, but you already answered it. The essence of Vedanta is self-knowledge.
Self-realization.
Self-realization.
Yes.
Now, what does it mean? I mean, are there two selves here? The self that needs to be realized, and the realizing self, that is the self that, is discontented or feels the anxieties of existence. So are there two selves, or is there only
There are
one
many,
self?
many selves.
There
Actually.
are many selves, okay.
The mental self and a vital self, as you know. And then within the mental self, then there are other. We are all very split. So there's this mental self and that mental self and this vital self. There are lots of selves that we identify with in bits and parts. And most of us...
But what is the true self then?
So, how do you know you're all these selves? That's really where the inquiry starts. How do I know that there are all these selves, or an intellectual self of mine and an emotional self? So when you pay a little bit more attention to this, then you will very quickly realize, discern that there's something or someone observing these selves. And you will sense the difference between what you believed yourself to be, the intellectual self, the emotional self, and something else that's watching this. So then you begin to ask, what is that self that's watching these selves? Obviously, it's not these selves. There's something that is sort of split from there and now has taken a step back and watching these selves. So that is the beginning of the Vedantic journey. And
so
then,
are you saying then, in the Upanishadic fashion, that there is the suffering self and the witness self?
Yes, witness self, of course, has many layers too. Then there's a witness of the witnessing self. How do I know I'm witnessing all this? How do I know I'm observing these selves and the world beyond it? So there is this observing, witnessing self, but then you again become aware of something still deeper, that is observing the observer.
But that's infinite regression.
So, till there is nowhere to regress to. There are several layers of regression. We are going to subtler layers of consciousness till one day you simply there's nowhere farther to go. There's nowhere deeper to go. You've come to the
ground of being.
Ground zero perhaps. And then you see everything clearly. There's a vivid clarity. Then you see all the selves, the observer self, the observed self, and world in which all these selves are happening, as and everything passing, because nothing is stable. No self is stable. It's continuously changing, moving. It's a fluid, everything fluid, and yet you're completely conscious of something that's not moving. It's not fluid, which is observing but not being observed, which is aware of all the passing, all the changes, but it's itself not changing. It's not passing, and it's there. Then you realize that I'm not all those selves. I'm this that is aware of all that, yet completely independent of all that. You can blank out all those selves and the world, and still you are exactly what you are, unchanged. So that's when you've, as I say, that's when you've come to the threshold of the self, the threshold of the knower, the self. So you've come to the sea. All this while you were walking down the shore. Now you've actually come to the sea, and you can still feel the beach under your feet, but then there's a lot of water. And now for a few moments you hesitate. Should I go further? How deep does it get? That's very comfortable. Shall I go back? And then it's probably the grace again that says, okay, child, move.
Go for it.
Go. I'm there. And that's the breakthrough moment where you do, I go. And then there's no coming back.
There's no coming back. Sri Ramakrishna.
And then there's not only no coming back, then there's no speaking about it. Mm-hmm. Then you can't describe what happens after that. Some of those who come to my used to come to my retreats would ask me, what, they would need something to understand. So the analogy I would give to them is the event horizon of the black hole. There's a black hole, and an object, let's say you're moving in a spaceship into it, and you come to a place which the physicists call the event horizon, and that's the last the world sees of you, because after that you're pulled into the black hole, and what happens after that is physics of another kind. But for an observer out there, he or she will see you going, and coming to the event horizon, then freezing there, because light ceases to move beyond that point. So you'll just see Makrant there, and that's it. A very distorted Makrant, but he doesn't move anymore. But the real Makrant has gone into the black hole, and there's no one left to come back and describe. So you've come to what we call the anirvachaniya.
Of course.
You've come to that which cannot be described.
It's beautiful the way you've, so to speak, given this analogy, because Sri Ramakrishna says the salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean.
Yes.
So obviously when you take the plunge, you become...
Yes.
But a different kind of physics begins that. I love that, because maybe that is where metaphysics begins, the meta. But I mean, that's just a quibble on the language. But, the thing is that, these are unpassable, as it were, and impossible horizons. And yet, these are, they give meaning to everything else. Like the Tao, the only true Tao is the one that cannot be spoken.
Yes.
So this is the paradox that, William James said the mystical experience is noetic. In other words, it can't be captured in words.
Yes.
And yet, it's inexhaustible. It's inexhaustible potential from which all poetry, all expression of the inexpressible arises,
Yes.
Let us, in a way, bracket that out just for the moment. Though, as I said, if we do not even mention it or talk about that as a possibility, then in a way, Vedanta is meaningless, because whether you call it nirvana or kaivalya or mukti or moksha or whatever these states are called, it is those goals that have defined the spiritual quest, for millennia. So though that end point, the omega point, let's say, is indescribable, it is still the point to which we all aspire. So we will leave that out for the moment, but retreat a little bit. And what about, Partho, all these different schools of Vedanta? Now, listening between your lines, as it were, to the important pauses, the pregnant pauses, if you will, I think the answer is already there, which is Vedanta is not about books. It's about the actual journey, the practice, the experience, right?
Yes.
But there is so much, in India we have vast reams of this literature.
Yes.
And the technologies of liberation, if you want to call it, or transformation, are so abundant that it makes you think, what was wrong with these people? These ancient Hindus, if you want to call them that they spend so much time and energy producing all of this, material. What's the use of it? Do you just discard it by the wayside and just plunge in, as you said?
It's a very important question, Makrant. So I'll tell you what I learned from my first teacher in Vedanta. So I had similar questions. I went to her and I said that, what about these paths of Vedanta? Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, this, and if you recall, as I said, I'd read a lot about Vedanta at that time in Divan books. It was all there, and I think she saw that. So she just looked at me and said, answer one question, because you've read a lot. Can thought take you to what you call the self? I thought about that. I said, no. From whatever I've read of the self, one thing I'm convinced, thought cannot take you there. So, isn't this a good time to give up thought? I can't just give up thought. No, you can't. But you can at least give up your fascination with thought, your need for thought. I said, yeah, that can be done. I mean, I can convince myself that I don't need to think because it's not going to get me there. It's logical. Any intelligent mind would immediately understand that if I have to go there and thought will not take me there, then why am I going to spend time with thought? So that was my first inner break with thought. I think since then, I've had lesser and lesser to do with thought. Thought was there for a long time. It was there, but it was like it was amusement. It's like when you get bored and you play with things, or you scribble or
doodle.
Yeah, just to amuse yourself, perhaps. So thought was there to amuse oneself. Sometimes you need that stimulation. So but inwardly, I knew that thought has nothing to do with Vedanta, and for me, the romance with thinking and knowledge and philosophy is over.
See, this is a very important juncture, I feel, Partho, because, in our own way, we have managed to steer this very conversation from the realm of the intellectual to something, I think, more meaningful. And yet, I can't help asking you that we know that thought cannot touch it. Words cannot reach it. We know that.
Right.
And yet, there is the Gyan Marg, and yet, the systems of, analysis or Viveka, the discernment, the proof, not just Shankara or even Vivekananda, but Sri Aurobindo. Look at the life divine. Look at the amount of time that was spent in explaining or working out the ways of the divine for mankind, as it were. Why would they do that?
So all that is needed, Mukund. I feel that there's all kinds of human beings, all kinds of humans who come to the sadhana, to the spiritual path. And everyone comes with his or her own swadharma, swabhava, his or her own karmic
predispositions.
Predisposition, that's the right word. And you'll have to be, just as we do in integral education, as you know so very well. Each child learns in his or her own way, and we have to do it that way. There's no one size fits all, especially so in spirituality, which is so intensely personal. So, yes, all these things, somebody would need to read Sri Aurobindo or Vivekananda or all the commentaries and all the Upanishads. And for some, it's I call it the divine's grace that you, at the very beginning of your journey, you find a guru who catches hold of you and throws you into the deep end straight away. And you're done with it all. Boom, finished. And it's not that I'm saying that you dismiss all that. Of course you don't. But you don't take it seriously anymore. For you, it has no relevance. But it does have relevance for the world. And if the grace has given you a certain understanding, then I think you're dharma baddh to share that understanding. For whoever comes to you with any kind of an opening, you have to, that's the acharya dharma, you have to share it. That does not mean that it has any personal relevance for you.
Wow, that is a very good note on which I think we should bring this first part of our conversation to a close. We should, I think, bear in mind that the quest for the self takes us to a place which thought cannot reach. Thank you very much, Partho.
Thank you, Margaret.
And let's continue this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.